What's up guys, how's it going? It's Dan here from CryingOR. So retro collecting's taken on a bit of a life of its own, and I've definitely been bitten by that bug. I've been collecting for about two and a bit years now, and these are my top 10 tips for collecting. Number 1, documentation and lists. Now I know it sounds really boring, but unless you're some kind of idiot savant, there is no way you're going to A, be able to remember every game that came out for the system you're collecting for, or B, remember all the games you have for all the different systems. That means you might very well end up passing up on good bargains because you think you've already got a game, but it turns out you've got it for a different console. Or you may end up buying a game that you've already got for that console, thinking that you had it for another one. Now I have a full list of all the PAL releases for the consoles I mostly collect for, and this also helps me with kind of searching for games as well. So, you know, I'll hit eBay and stuff and I'll kind of think, oh, well, I don't know what that game is, let's have a look and see how much that's going for and stuff like that. Because you will, off the top of your head, be able to come up with all the sort of the usual suspects. But when trying to build a large collection, there'll be loads of games in there you've never heard of or you don't know. So you just Google them or you go from the list and away you go. Plus, one of the big advantages of this is there's nothing quite as satisfying as highlighting something on your list and ticking it off as complete. I mean, like, it's really satisfying. Now, this leads on to my second point, or second of my top 10, which is sort of setting yourself little goals and little targets. Now, when I first started, I was just literally trying to get a big collection of consoles, and I also wanted games that I either had back in the day or that I really wanted back in the day. And I built up this collection of consoles, and then very quickly realised I'd spent most of my money on the consoles and hadn't bought any games for them. So I'd sort of rigidly set myself this goal that I was going to get 50 games for the consoles I've got. It's just an arbitrary figure I picked out the back of my head for no apparent reason, just because I thought it would look good. And then after I'd done that, I would then buy some consoles. I still have a big long list of consoles. In fact, I could probably come up with at least 5 or 6 off the top of my head without even thinking too hard that I still want to get. Atari 2600 Vader Edition, Sega Mega Drive High Def Audio Edition, 32X, Amiga 1200, Amiga CD32, Panasonic 3DO, PlayStation 1 Gen 1, PlayStation 2 Slim Silver Edition, PlayStation 3. Now, I broke my rule of getting 50 games for the systems I already had before I would then buy any more systems, but that was only purely and simply because the 2 systems that I got were they don't come up very often, and they popped up at the right price at the right time, so I ended up just picking them up. So you don't have to be totally rigid with it, but you know, it often helps. And also when you've got the big long lists and you're setting goals, you can sort of look and say, well, I've got, like, you know, James Pond 2, so now I need to get James Pond 1 and 3 just so I can block out that little section. Or, for instance, you might look at sort of a certain page and go, oh, well, I haven't got any games on that page. So you can kind of go, well, I'm going to try and get those ones there within that to try and fill that up. So having lists and then setting goals is always good fun. Now, my overall goal is I want to try and get a close to complete selection of the cartridge-based consoles, really, the major players. So we're talking NES, SNES, N64, Sega Mega Drive, and Master System. And you know, that's probably not particularly realistic, purely and simply because of the cost of some of the rarer PAL Sega Mega Drive games. Like literally this year, Lakers versus Celtics ended up going for £3,380. Now, there is no way I can have that conversation with my sort of wife-to-be, which I say, oh, I've just spent £3,000 on a Sega Mega Drive game, and that doesn't end in divorce. I don't have any idea how much amount of spare disposable cash I would have to have for me to be able to go, yeah, £3,500 for a Mega Drive game, yeah, that's totally legit. I mean, just to put that in perspective, here's a really nice 3-litre convertible BMW that you could pick up for the same money. So, you know, it's a bit of an unlikely thing that I'm going to get a full set, but I'm certainly going to get as close to as is sort of feasibly possible. Okay, tip number 3 is eBay bundles are your friend. eBay bundles are a great way to save money, but you need to be hitting them early on. Now that might not necessarily be too easy because you might not really want to build up a huge collection at first, and that might just come sort of later down the line. But certainly it's a good way of bulking up your collection and getting lots and lots of the more common titles at a cut price. So you can end up with like a couple of games in there that are sort of a reasonable value, and then 5 or 6 that are really cheap and like very, very common. And you're effectively getting them for like £1 each or £2 or £3 each. You're hardly paying anything if you look at it that way, when you would have to spend sort of more on the more expensive games if you were getting them on their own. Now this gets harder and harder the more you collect, purely and simply because you end up with more and more duplicates, or you end up looking at bundles and thinking, well, I've got like 3/4 of the games in that bundle, so it's not really worth paying the bundle price when I've got to then try and shift and get rid of the other ones, whether that be trying to sell them back on eBay, or whether it be that you're going to part X them in a game store. Okay, number 4 is research. You always want to sort of have a good idea of what you're looking for and what it is you're buying. I have 2 very good examples of which research kind of changed things for me, both in a good way and a bad way. Now, the first one was in the GameCube. I saw a video that Metal Jesus had done, where he had a HDMI converter for the back of the GameCube, which I wasn't really that fussed on. Obviously, I thought, oh, the GameCube looks loads better through HDMI. But what was more interesting was that he had the Game Boy adapter, and I thought, oh yeah, of course, the Game Boy Advance had loads of really good games for it, and so did the original Game Boy. And they all come on cartridge. So I was like, oh yeah, that'd be dead good. I could get the Game Boy adapter, and then I can get the GameCube. And I'm not too fussed about games for the GameCube, but then I can obviously start collecting all for the Game Boy Advance, and those games are dirt cheap. So I hit eBay and started having a look, and I managed to find a janky old GameCube that had seen better days. It was like quite yellowed on the front and stuff like that, but it was up really cheap. It was only about sort of 20-25 quid, I think it was. No games or anything like that, but I mean, it definitely lived a life. It was the purple one, and the front panel had yellowed, and it had all covered in magic marker and stuff like that. But I thought, well, an afternoon with some IPA and then some peroxide on the yellow, leave it out in the sun, it should clean up fairly nice. And then I managed to find a Game Boy Advance adapter, again going for about 10-15 quid, I think it was, for about 40 quid all in. I then have a Game Boy Advance adapter that I can use on the big TV, and I can crack on with that and collect with those for the Game Boy Advance. I didn't pull the trigger on it, and I don't really know why I didn't. I just didn't. I thought, well, maybe next payday. So it was about 2 or 3 days later, I was chatting to Rob, and he was like, oh yeah, when you're buying the Game Boy Advance adapter, make sure you get it with a boot disc. I was like, with the what? With the what now? He's like, you need to get it with the boot disc, otherwise it doesn't work. It came with like a disc that goes in the GameCube. If you don't have that, the bottom part is just effectively a lump of plastic, and it doesn't do anything. A lot of them, you'll see them all over eBay going for 10-15 quid, and that's because they don't have the boot disc. So you need to make sure you've got it with that, otherwise it's useless. Strangely enough, and that's exactly what I was looking at buying. So, after doing like literally, and it's not even proper research, but literally just after one conversation, I managed to save myself an awful lot of time and hassle, and make sure I hadn't bought a complete pup. The flip side of that is that the N64 that I bought from a second-hand shop around the corner from my place where I work, and this was what really kind of kicked me off with the retro collecting. There was an N64 that was going for 40 quid, and I thought, oh yeah, guy at uni had an N64, and I played on it a little bit, and I really, really liked that console. I thought it was dead good, and 40 quid, that's alright. It's just a nice little. It's not a huge amount of money to be spending, and yeah, that'll be alright. I'll play a few N64 games, maybe get Mario and stuff like that, and that'll kind of open Pandora's box right there. But so I went in and I said, oh yeah, I want to buy the N64. She gets it down and she does it have any games, or do you have any games or anything? She said, no, we don't have any games in. She said, it's just the console on its own, but it comes with a memory card. Now, I sort of had a look at it, and it was like this whacking great tumour of a memory card, and I was like, I don't remember the memory cards looking like that. The ones that I saw when I was at uni, they were only like little ones. So I was like, alright, okay, that's fine. So 40 quid, thought, nice one. So I paid the 40 quid, bundled it up, and came home. I got it home, and I wanted to find out what the chuff this whacking great tumour thing was. So I went online, typed in N64 memory card into thing, and I found out it was a rumble pack. And I was like, oh wow, because I mean all the labels had come off it and stuff, but it was a rumble pack, and the N64 was the first console to be released with active rumble in the controllers, albeit with the this adapter, and that was a rumble pack and memory card all in one. So I was like, oh right, okay, that's quite cool. And then I had a look, and they were going for about 15 to 25 quid each. So I was like, oh right, so my £40 N64, which is roughly what they go for around here without anything, and I've gained a 15-20 quid rumble pack. And then again on the list, as soon as I typed in N64 memory pack, it came up with loads of RAM expansions as well. I was like, I did not know that you could put more RAMs in your N64. I was not aware of that. So I sort of had a look at those, and they're red, and they go in the little slot at the front. I was like, oh right, okay. So I got my N64 and I pulled the cap off to see where the RAMs would go, and in there was the red-topped RAM expansion pack actually in the console already. And then I looked them up, and they were going for 30 quid. So my £40 N64, because she hadn't done her research on what she was selling, my £40 N64 had come with a £30 RAM adapter and a £15 rumble pack adapter as well. So I'd ended up, doing really, really well out of that. Obviously, the more educated you are, the better you're going to end up doing. Okay, number 5 is do not rush. Do not rush when you are buying games. I've lost count of how many times I've either bought the wrong thing, or I've done it just because I was on, it was kind of, I was either up against it for time, or because I was just not paying attention, basically. I bought, when I did the retro collecting journey thing with Rob, I came back with Zelda 2 for the NES when I thought I was buying Zelda 1. I ended up getting Zelda 1 for the NES, clearly. It's Zelda fucking 2. Oh, never mind. So I got Zelda 2 rather than Zelda 1. I thought it was Zelda 1, but never mind, it's Zelda 2. Don't give a fuck, I still need Zelda 1, it would appear. But never mind.
Sir.
So I think we'll redo that. And I've also had another experience where I bought Double Dragon 2 for the NES as well. And I just picked it up and grabbed it, and I was like, oh, wicked. And then when I got it home, I found out that it was the FRA version rather than the GBA or the PAL-A, so potentially that won't work in my PAL-A NES. And then again, I also bought Top Gun, the second mission, thinking that I already had the original Top Gun, and it turned out I had the second mission, so I had to go back and swap that. All of these are just because I've been rushing, not necessarily paying attention, so don't rush. Take your time. If you're buying it, then make sure you're getting exactly what you were expecting or what you were wanting. Okay, number 6 is, once you've found something that you're after, and you have paid for it, and you paid what you are happy is a reasonable amount, and you're okay with that, for the love of God, don't look for that again, ever. Because I guarantee that will only ever, all that will ever happen is really make you miserable on that. I bought an Atari Jaguar not so long back. This was when I was still supposed to be getting 50 games, and ended up buying a console because it came up and it was half price. That was the key thing. Jaguars over here, I'd only really ever seen them coming up boxed, basically. So it's a Jaguar boxed with a game, and they were all for a certain price that I'm not going to disclose, and they were all, because the missus may very well be listening, but they were all like roughly about the same sort of price. And I was like, oh, that's a lot. And then one of them came up about 6 months prior to that, and it was for half price, and it was unboxed. And I was like, well, I would like the Jaguar box, but at half price, that's amazing. Yeah, definitely. And I had a look at the pictures, and it was a little janky. Some of the wires looked a little bit ropey. In fact, actually, one of the wires was coming out of the controller, so I'd had to open that up, and I ended up not buying it, and it ended up going. And I always thought about that. I was like, oh, next time one comes up at a decent price, I am going to get a Jaguar. Lo and behold, about 6 to 8 months later, another one came up, unboxed, just ready to go, and it looked in really good condition, and again, it was half the price. And I was like, there is no way the box and the manuals is worth the amount extra, you know what I mean, an extra 50% on top of what the unboxed version, or in fact an extra 100% on top of what the unboxed version is worth. So I pulled the trigger on that, really happy. There we go, unboxed Jaguar. I'm really chuffed to bits with it. And then I thought, well, I'll just see what games I can get. This was a couple of days later, once it was on its way. I thought, I'll probably maybe pick up a couple of games. Now, on eBay, Jags don't come up very often, so I thought, oh, well, I'll just type in Atari Jaguar rather than Atari Jaguar games. Typed in Atari Jaguar, and bang, the very first hit on the top, an Atari Jaguar boxed for, it was no more than 15 quid what I'd paid for the unboxed one. So, and again, it was pretty much half the price of all the other boxed ones. And it looked in half reasonable condition as well. And I was absolutely devastated. It was like if I'd have waited another 3 or 4 days for an extra 10 or 15 quid, I could have had a boxed one. And yeah, that was a little bit gutting. And that was actually on eBay for the grand spanking total of about 2 hours, and then it was gone. It was just like I emailed Rob about it and showed him it. He had a look at it, and then when I went back to look at it about a couple of hours later, it had gone, because I was very much thinking about buying it and then flocking the other one back, trying to sell that back on eBay. Yeah, I was absolutely gutted about that, you know, had I waited another couple of days. But, you know, that was a freak sort of instance. There is no way that an Atari Jaguar was ever going to come up boxed for that amount of money, and yet it did. So once you have bought something and you are happy with the price you paid for it, you paid, you know, what it's worth, or, you know, just under or around about, and you're happy with it, never ever look for that item again, because unless it's like many years down the line and you're interested, don't do it around about the same time, because you will be really gutted, I guarantee you. Number 7 is tell people that you know that you are collecting retro games. It's a little bit embarrassing, or it certainly can be depending on where you work. But yeah, tell people that you retro collect. You'd be amazed how many people have got old consoles, old games, or old stuff just stuffed up in their attic, or my kids have got, like, you know, all these games that they never play with or whatever. You know, send them over. You know, more merrier. I'll give you some money for them or whatever. And I've been able to do quite well out of that just where I work. I know I have an advantage over Rob because Rob's self-employed, so he don't work with nobody, so he's got nobody to ask. Whereas I just, you know, put it out there at work, and I managed to get out of that a PlayStation 2 with 2 controllers and about 15 or 20 games for free. And I also ended up managing to get a couple of CRT tellies as well, like full decent sized CRT tellies as well, again for free. Now these are all things that Rob's had to pay for, so nah. Okay, number 8 is practice lying to your partner and your friends about how much you've spent on these things, because don't tell the truth, because they won't understand and they will be really annoyed. Another thing, hide your bank statements as well. That's definitely an important thing. And just like, yeah, no, it wasn't that much at all. I'm getting a glare now from round the door. I think she heard.
You lied to me about how much you spent?
From time to time. I've seen your reaction already to some of the spending that I have done. So how much do you think is the most I've spent on one single game?
One, like, what little cartridge?
Well, yeah, one game.
I'm guessing you know in your head what it is.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is, yeah.
So tell me what it was.
You want me to tell you how much I've spent on?
No, don't tell me how much you spent. Tell me what it was.
Oh, the game was Demolition Man. It was boxed and complete with manual in really good condition. In the US, that's worth next to nothing because it was really common. However, in the PAL region, it was really rare. So it's one of the more expensive games for the Sega Mega Drive. So go on, how much do you think I spent on that?
50 quid.
A little bit more than that.
£100?
Yeah, on one game. Number 9, do not compare your collection to YouTubers. That will only ever disappoint you. Now, I have like a fairly reasonable collection. If I was to show my collection to a non-collector, or even to someone that just plays games generally and isn't into retro collecting, they would think I have like quite a substantial collection. I've got somewhere in the region of about 250 to 300 retro games, and then you go online and Metal Jesus has got 7,000. And the last gamer who has the world record, he's got something in the region of about 24,000 games, and then maybe a couple of hundred arcade cabinets and things. You know, you're never going to be able to compete with them. and potentially a lot of them have been doing it for 20 years or 15, 30 years or something like that. So never ever compare your collection to what other people have. Just do it and just be happy with what you're getting. And number 10 is just try and enjoy it. Try and enjoy it, because nobody else will, nobody else understands. And when you're lying awake at night on your own after you've been divorced and you're about to go bankrupt and the whole world is crashing around your eyes, at least then you can kind of go, yes, I finally have fucking Alien Soldier for the Mega Drive. That's fine, and that will definitely keep you warm and take away the cold pain of knowing that you've wasted all of your money and time and effort finding games that should potentially really just be sent to landfill.